Are we live? Just checking to see if things are good. I don't even know if I'm supposed to have this. Yeah, we'll hide that for a moment. We'll hide that away. I'm gonna start on the minute mark for the live thing, so that people know what's up, what's going on. Have a drink of my my coffee water here. It does not taste fantastic, but it does okay. You know, water is water. And nearly there. 3, 2, 1. Sup Shredders! My name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Livestreams where today we will be checking out Britney Spears' top 5 tracks on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. And if we switch over to here, we have everything set up on Spotify, good to go. We have the top 5 tracks on this page, and we're going to be listening through Womanizer, as well as Oops, I Did It Again, Baby One More Time, Gimme More, and Toxic. Now, I'm not super knowledgeable about Britney's journey over the last bit. I know she's had it rough. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding how she's been treated. Hopefully people can fill me in on it in the comments if they feel so inclined. Sup Blue Dinner Box, how you doing? Hopefully you're having a good day today. But we are going to be hopefully enjoying these 5 tracks. So far, we've done a fair few of these weekly live streams. So if you're interested in just keeping up to date with these, we typically do artist top 5s on Sundays in New Zealand time, or Saturdays in other parts of the world. But yeah, should be good. Should be good. Hopefully your move's been going well, Blue Dinner Box. Hopefully everything is moved in now and you're all good. I know you've had to do some moving over the last little bit. Last time we reviewed Imagine Dragons, and I think I had... It's Britney time. It's Britney, bitches. Let's do it. I am keen to hear more. Let's just get started, shall we? So we'll get rid of intro time because we're right into it. Let's just do Womanizer. Let's go. Track number 5 or 1 for today. Nice and loud in the headphones. And this is off of the Circus deluxe album released in 2008. Get the lyrics up on the screen.
To all the other chicks out here, but I know what you are, baby. Look at you.
Great little Tom Phil there.
Baby, you got all the puppets with the strings up, faking like a good one, but I call them like I see them. I know what you are, baby.
These lyrics really hit, don't they? Like the stuff she's saying is like quite heavy. Great transition. And it's those little kind of like little drills there, just those little adjustments instrumentally that absolutely elevate it. Pop, pop, pop.
You got me going. You're oh so charming, but I can't do it. You womanizer. Boy, don't try to front. No, just what you are. Boy, don't try to front. No, just what you are. You say I'm crazy. I got you crazy. You're nothing but a
Very cool response from the U's and Britney herself.
if we both lived in a different world. It would be all good and maybe I could be your girl, but I can't 'cause we don't. You womanizer, womanizer, you're a womanizer, oh, you're a womanizer, baby. You are, you are, womanizer, womanizer, womanizer. Boy, don't try to front, no, just what you are. Boy, don't try to front, no, just what you are. You got me going, you're oh so charming, but I can't do it. You womanizer. Boy, don't try to front, no, just what you are. Boy, don't try to front, no, just what you are. You say I'm crazy, I got you crazy. You're nothing but a womanizer. Boy, don't try to front,
And iterating without anything else underneath. Fantastic. Apart from the siren sound, I suppose. I mean, that was just so vivacious and full of life, wasn't it? There was so much to absorb and take in there, you know? Part of what works about this track is that it's just so easy to understand what the song is about. She's very clear, even with wordplay, about the fact that she's keeping an eye on this guy who is a womanizer. You know, the swagger of a champion, struggling to find the right companion. But that's the tricky part of having one to me. Like, there's just these lines in it that are fantastic. I mean, lollipop must mistake me, you're the sucker. I mean, it's clever stuff, you know. The lyrics are fantastic. The overall swagger and groove of the track is fantastic. The personality and accent behind it is really firm. And I think that this was a part in Britney's career where she was just a whole lot more assertive about her position with stuff, in comparison to some of her earlier work, arguably. So, I mean, there's an inherent sort of like sensuality to it, considering the subject matter. But it's just a really interesting start to proceedings there. You have someone, first of all, who can just sing really well. There are some spoken parts. There are some main sort of sung melodies there. And there are these catchy melodies, bum, 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 even within the verse, you know. We're not sleeping on making each part matter lyrically, which is really good, as well as sort of vocally. And we have these fantastical responses with the you know, it's like upper range parts. You say I'm crazy, I've got you crazy. And they help to split these choruses up in a way that's very satisfying. You have adjustments and differences in approach between the different verse, chorus, and interlude patterns and stuff like that. There's just so much to appreciate there, and so much coloration and attention to detail that alone is awesome. But then you just get to the rest of the track. We're at 3 minutes 42. It's just incredibly well structured. Like, you just go to the start, and you've got these separate synth takes with the siren sound as if, oh no, we've found a womanizer, you know, and there's that innate kind of edge to it. But it's also the separate kind of groovy synths underneath it, the sequences, and then you've got the drums showing their face a little bit. And then you have Britney sort of go on top of that and push forward with that. It's just a fantastic, very quick, effortless development that further fleshes out the track in a way that I think is really classy, and it just, all the textures match, you know, those synthetic elements there, you know, making a bit more kind of modern sounding. And we're really kind of making the most of like the late 2000s, early 2010s, so EDM sort of synth focus with a lot of that stuff. So it was very trendy there. And we've got like a chord note groove as well. It's like a quick track, but there's also little tom fills and other adjustments with the percussion that's sort of elevated, you know, mix ups with the different 8th and 16th note grooves on like the cymbals and stuff like that. The click sounds, kind of just people dancing along to it like that, you know, it's fantastic. But it's so full of life in the chorus sections as well. You know, you have the double tracking of the vocals to add a little bit more sort of like space and kind of heft to it. But then what's just really groovy about it is just the overall scope of it. Like, how do I describe it? The way that the music sort of surrounds you in the stereo field there's this lushness to the pads there, and you have the Womanizer, and like you have the down octave stuff as well to transfer, and it's just, and you have the little kind of sub kind of clicking like 30-second note kicks, like those kind of drill parts as well. There's little bits of ear candy and sort of little nuances there rhythmically, as well as in terms of the overall sort of like harmonies and melodies that are great. We have chromatics within sort of transitions, like the way we cascade down at the end of each time of the chorus there. Boom, boom, boom. And it's just, and it's actually also just the actual quality of the tones and textures within those synth patterns there for late 2000s. It was dreamy, this dreamy aesthetic there where we kind of imagine an alternate universe where they could have been together, but clearly they can't. And that's just the situation we have there. So ultimately just fantastic music, like really good stuff. And we've got like phasing or phases or flanger on her vocals as well to kind of contrast between her sort of main straightforward takes and that, just to further kind of make it exciting. You know, and we have, again, like variations, as I mentioned, with the hi-hats and stuff. Just there's little bits of decoration to really make it a special song there, as if they were really, really dead set on keeping your attention the entire time. But yeah, there's enough range developmentally, structurally throughout the piece to make it matter. I think just thematically, the way you've got, again, the alarm sounds, letting people know they found a womanizer, the approach with the vocals, trying to sort of like address that sort of like raw traction in the player sort of like mentality and stuff like that. But also kind of taunting the guy, know just what you are, you know, just the almost the kind of weird playfulness and the sort of awareness of game. It's just, it's so cool. And I think I appreciate Britney's music more as I've gotten older, because I've gotten a bit more open-minded. And there is just something really special about the stuff from this era, like songs like Toxic as well. I don't think we're listening to Toxic today, which is, oh no, it's literally the one at the start. I'm very excited for Toxic, never mind. Toxic is at the end. That's going to be a wild ride. And for it to kind of finish with just the mid to upper range elements at the end there with her going over the chorus, they could have had a fade out or something like that. But just for it to just be her alone is just really impactful. So I think, and just incredible overall, wonderfully structured track with a theme that is kind of got a kind of a quirkiness and a boppiness to it that wants to get you moving at the pace, I suppose, that the player is working at, but also has a sense of menace, and it's kind of sinister sounding with the minor intonations. It's almost like, yeah, no, we know this is not a good situation, that we're going to spice it up a little bit regardless. Post-production wise, fantastic for the time. I like the fact that there's a bit of dynamic range to it while still being well glued, because there was a lot of issues with like loudness war in the late 2000s, where people were just pushing the limiter until it choked the track dynamically. I think Britney's takes are fantastic here. You can tell she's actually singing, you know, even if there's a bit of assistance in post, it's not too much. There's different effects and different vocals and different sort of like modulators and stuff that just make it more interesting. The different sort of synth bass kind of drum parts and all the other kind of like bits of ear candy as well are well fleshed out and well placed in the stereo field and the frequency spectrum without anything arguing. And it's nice and loud without pumping. So like, honestly, just there's like a bit of side chaining, but it's not superfluous. So fantastic start to proceedings. Fantastic start to proceedings. A really good track. I don't think I've listened to a musician so far outside of Bruno Mars where actually, you know, even with Bruno Mars, I wasn't necessarily a fan of his earlier stuff. And that didn't necessarily change upon checking out his previous work, you know, like in the last live stream we did. But there hasn't been a musician so far where I've genuinely liked every one of the top 5 tracks. So I'm wondering if that is going to be the case today. And I'm excited for that to be a possibility and for that to potentially become evident. So track number 4 out of top the 4. Oops, I Did It Again. Off of the Oops, I Did It Again album in 2000, which I think has recently, if I'm not mistaken, had a 25th anniversary edition released, because it's been 25 years since that album came out. Holy crap, dude. This is nostalgia. Very 90s.
Did it again. I made you believe we're more than just friends.
Very distinct voice as well. It's not a voice I would like. If I heard it, I'd be like, yeah, that does sound like Britney Spears. There's kind of like a twang to it with like a kind of like a weird throatiness to it. You get a bit more of that with the previous track we heard, but it's like less kind of they've really filtered those strings. I love it. You think I'm in love, that I'm sent from above, I'm not that innocent. It's really cool. I like the stories that are being told here. I'm not sure if Britney wrote the lyrics, but there are some interesting things being said here. You know, that Britney's an intelligent woman.
See, my problem is this. I'm dreaming away, wishing that heroes they truly exist. I cry watching the days. Can't you see I'm a fool in so many ways? But to lose all my senses, that is just so typically me, baby. Oh, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in the game. Oh, baby, baby, oops, you think I'm in love, and I'm sent from above. I'm not that innocent.
I challenge anyone that has not listened to the song through headphones to do so. It was designed for that. Like, just the way that you had the little tippy taps on that side and then things sort of peter around there. I would recommend that thoroughly. And Blue Dinner Box, Britney's voice is very distinctive, but probably drive me crazy if someone talked to me like that in real life. I feel you on that. There's some deliberate, what's the word? It seems deliberate. Then again, I don't actually think I've heard Britney just talk. So I think it's maybe a way that they were either instructed to try and do it by producers, or, I mean, it worked regardless. Yeah, I think the context is important, but I feel you on that.
Britney, before you go, there's something I want you to have.
Oh, it's beautiful. But wait a minute, isn't this...
Yeah, yes it is.
But I thought the old lady dropped it into the ocean in the end.
Well, baby, I went down and got it for you.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
Oops, I did it again to your heart. Got lost in this game, oh baby. Oops, you better stand for
Great adjustment of the chorus at the end, dude.
I'm not that innocent. Oops, I did it again. I played with your heart, got lost in the game. Oh baby, baby, you think I'm in love, and I'm sent from above.
Now, how are they going to adjust it? Now that's kind of wild to me. That is an interesting song. I really do think there's a lot of value in listening to it with an active listening thing. I know that I talk about it almost every time, and it's a similar feeling I've had to previous tracks from Bruno Mars or Imagine Dragons. But I think it's, if you are unsure if you like a song, I think it's worth listening to it without anything else interrupting you, just to give it a fair shot. So let's talk about this one. I think that it's about someone who has felt led on by Britney, and Britney's just saying, look, I know you think that there's something, but there's not. Like, I'm not that innocent, and I know that, like, I know that I want stuff like you're talking about, but we've just misinterpreted or misappropriated it, you know? You've just gotten carried away. It's just a bit of a mess, you know? It's something that I think a lot of people could probably relate to. In addition to, you know, the womanizer stuff and the previous track, you know, people womanizing, you know. And so with that story in mind, I think we need to sort of examine the track outside of that. I think this is the first song that I heard from Britney Spears. And I think that it's an incredibly strong start to her work. I think given the marketing back then, the way that she was promoted in her videos and stuff like that, I think that the way that she sung is really well done. There is this kind of like pull and twist and kind of interesting expression to it, you know? Hang on a minute. I'll just... Hopefully you didn't hear that. I just had to cough. I try not to cough into the microphone, you know? I tried not to cough into the microphone. There we go. The way that she sings is probably the first for me. Yeah, I'd say so. I think that was her big song. That was a big song that really launched her career and just put, you know, she was out in the world at that point. She sings well with good vocal technique. There is a lot of movement with the various melodies, and there's a lot of notes within some of those tails and those patterns. And she does show solid head and chest voice, and it's actually really articulate. And I like the fact that she's able to do that in a pop track and make it work. And it's a kind of a consistent thing, but then there's some parts like an interlude where she's kind of speaking, and it's like more kind of like whimsical, I suppose, like a kind of a fantasy thing, you know. And then there's a bit more minimalism in some parts of the chorus with the Oops, I Did It Again part where there's the multi-tracking simply, I think, to make that work. But then she does some of those tails, and it's just great for things to sort of go over each other. And I like that there is that understanding of when to really kind of work it and when to sort of pull back a little bit. There's no incredible mind-blowing belts in here. There's no kind of operatic kind of virtuosic passages here vocally. Britney Spears is not that kind of singer, and they don't need to be, because they can sing well enough, establish themselves comfortably in their vocal range, and they can sing well with those movements there. But there were some tails and sort of twists and turns there on the mic that were really impressive. But it's just they know how to balance that out. They know how to express themselves in a way which makes sense for the subject matter. There's a bit of innocence mixed with some playfulness, mixed with some sort of like sadness, and people interpreted it how they did. I think having the backing chorus there and the chorus parts was just a fantastic move there. And the way they kind of went over each other and the final choruses there to sort of further develop and build it up was fantastic. Just the size and scope of that was wonderful. So yeah, the vocals are handled well. They told the story neatly, and I think that it's just an interest. Like again, like with the interlude section structurally, just going into this part where they talk about man and woman having this sort of imaginary conversation. It's just such a different thing to a lot of music nowadays. We're kind of pulling away completely from the main aspect of a track to sort of like go further into the story that they've created and add another twist to it. Now, for a lot of music, especially, I mean, I'm not going to go into my sort of like boomer platform and be like, oh, music wasn't always like this, you know, it used to be more complicated. That's not what I'm saying at all. It used to be a given, though, that like if it was an interlude, it would be like a twist or a turn. And here they're making the most of that. They offer an alternate perspective. I think having the different verses and choruses with the interlude at the end, going into that extended chorus, which kind of answers more of what's going on in that part, where they confess more, and then going back into the iteration of the chorus there to finish it off with a double part was fantastic. They could have potentially have put more layers in there at the end to kind of fill it up a little bit more, but I think they were still kind of mindful that this needed to be a single, and that it was probably already like long enough at 3.5 minutes as it needed to be in order to make that work. They could have done more, and I think they did the right amount. And I just think that, again, there was careful attention to detail there, much like the previous track. Instrumentally, you've got like different vocal text, don, 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 and the keys. And there's like a vinyl crackle, and there's just so much information immediately. It's such a dramatic start to proceedings there. It shows not only a really sort of competent understanding of studio production in terms of the way they pan the vocals to go from there, and there, but it's also having those really interesting textures and tones to like kind of catch you off guard, like, oh, what is this? And then the filtered vocal take there to kind of contrast even with those peripheral parts. And we have breathing as well. And then we suddenly have boom. And it's not too sharp with the way it picks up, but there's enough of a gap before that riser to kind of make you think that the track might be quieter for a bit. And then suddenly it pulled into the percussion, and then that kind of very 90s kind of thin kind of bass sound with the slap and stuff like that. It's fantastic. I love the tone of the keys there. I love the sound of the bass, how it sort of navigates those octaves and stuff like that. I love the kind of interesting kind of gritty tone to the drum kit there with a little bit of crispiness to it. You know, you've got like the white guitars on the side as well there for some reason there, maybe to sort of illustrate a slight bit of romance, something like Bomb Chicka Wow Wow, you know. And there's like a re-synth in the background there that's very subtle there, providing a bit of color in the mid-range during that bridge section as well, because we had like verses and bridges and choruses and interlude at the end. And like what's kind of interesting is you have the kind of stabby bass as well that accents certain parts. And then you also have these kind of starry keys that go with some of the top notes of the upper part of the choir, the backing vocals, you know, there's so many little instruments that play specific things that don't go too far outside of their comfort zone, but that when they're niched together, really do build the track up in a really positive way. And there's like it's kind of a brass stab or like a string stab or something like that. And then you got like the radio vocals as well. Like you go through this and there's just so many cool, neat things to point out that maybe you don't know to pay attention to them on the first listen. Also, the producer, Max Martin, really rules the teen pop era with her and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. That's a really valid thing to talk about, Blued in a Box. There were some instruments like that bass, or those sort of stabs there, or the drums, that they were used in different other bands as well. And they were just the flavor of pop in the 90s. They were just the flavor of that, and people loved that. It was addicting to people. You know, it really was. It was the personality of it. My partner loves music from that time. It's just and there's like adjustments to the way that we do the vocals in certain parts, and the drums go with those points for accenting certain components as well, which is really neat.
Yes, it is.
But I thought the old lady dropped it into the ocean in me.
And there's like a little kind of subtle kind of breakbeat drum beat there with saxophones.
Well, baby, I went down and got it for you.
Aw, you shouldn't have.
And there's like a little harp there, bringing it into that alternate version of the chorus. Like there's just so many cool little instruments playing individual bops and loops there that, when put into the wider context, create just a really well fleshed out track there. It's 2 for 2 as far as I'm concerned there. The performances are tight across the board. You had people either playing the instruments or you had people sampling them on different pieces of hardware, because the technology for audio electronic music production was just not that advanced in the 2000s. You know, like those kind of reverb tails and delays on the vocals as well, fantastic and provided nice ambience. But the fact that it just went down dynamically as well in that interlude section, and things were allowed to sort of float there with the chords in the ether, having the radio filtered kind of vocals of Britney Spears again, almost like on the phone between people, or like it was an old school film, which is wild. It's just wild, man. It's just so dope. So honestly, like, absolutely, I love this, man. Such a fantastic song. Yeah. I say this with all the love in the world, man. Like, honestly, you listen to, there are genres which just have the same instruments, but across decades. It's like, when I say that they sound similar, I don't see that as an issue necessarily. It's more that, you know, there's just a wish that people can continue to develop and find new sounds, but you understand why people use them, you know. There's a reason why people have the drums they do in electronic music, or why they all use those Nord stage kind of like keyboards and stuff. Like, there's just things that work well and sounds that work well. And I don't blame Max Martin for doing what he did here, because it was printing money, you know. So yeah, honestly, thematically, I think it was more a nod to the music of the time than trying to sort of specifically suit things. I think there was a little bit of a kind of vintage romanticism to what we were doing with the interlude section within this, with the soundscape of there, like, again, like the saxophone and like the little kind of like plucked parts there, and the pad elements in the interlude part. But I think it was more about the kind of drendy, kind of catchy groove of the drums and the bass and the funkiness of the guitars and stuff like that. Maybe kind of providing an almost kind of R&B-ish sort of like pop feel. That was kind of what sealed the trick with this. It's the adjustment to the groove and motif in parts of the verses and choruses and bridge parts that may elevate this track a bit and justify the doubling of choruses at the end and stuff like that. But just a lot of little tricks there. It's just, this could have been a very generic song, and a lot of the main components you pay attention to at face value could potentially look or sound like that. But if you kind of get into the weeds, it's really stellar. Yeah, I would say he probably does. I think there are pop musicians from the 90s that people remember, and a lot of those have similar tones because of that. And people voted with their wallets. They voted with their wallets. They bought those CDs. They bought those singles and stuff like that. Yeah. Production-wise, again, I love the sound design with things being popped onto the side of the stereo field at times. I think the filtering of vocals at other points for like the radio kind of sound is great. The deliberate LP crackle at the start of the track was really neat, how they kind of added a sort of vintage kind of like retro feel to that. I liked how well they actually made a kind of a starry sounding kind of pad crispiness in the chorus there, with the placement of those vocals as well in the mix there. There was a clear definition between highs and lows in that chorus, which was kind of surreal. Often you'll have producers trying to fill it up and make it thick and full at that point, but it almost kind of floated until it went back down to the drums in the verse parts. So just a lot of really cool, unique decisions there that elevate. And yeah. Britney, at this point, I think was finding her voice, but could clearly sing very well. And yeah. Very happy with it. Even if she had help in post, a lot of the things that she was doing at that point, technically, were complicated. They weren't easy things to do. And, you know, they were sounding great in the mix. So, excellent work. So that was track number... that was the second track of today. Number 4 out of the 5. If that's not too confusing. We've got Baby One More Time. I do also remember this one. Oh, right. Sorry, Blue Dinner Box. I need to sort of go back a little bit. Baby One More Time. I actually think you might be right there. I think that actually might be the first one that I heard. Maybe they came out at the same time. Oh, this was the first one, because this was her... Oh, she was a baby. She was a baby. She was young then, eh? To be fair, there's not much of a difference between them, but this would have been the first one because it came out in 1999. So that is. So they definitely, I would say they probably had the same production between the two albums. It's crazy that she put out a 16... What is this? Oh, different maybe remixes? Sup, Jiraj Vivana. Welcome to the live stream. Hopefully you're well. She put out a 14, 16 track album, and then she went and put out the next album, the one we listened to previously.
Shouldn't have let you go. And now you're right upside down. Show me how you want it to be. Tell me, baby, 'cause I need to know now. Because my loneliness is killing me. And I must confess, I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. Oh, baby, baby, the reason I breathe is you. Boy, you got me blinded. I'll get it, baby. There's nothing
Yeah, her voice is very distinctive, isn't it?
couldn't do. It's not the way I planned it.
There's so much drama to it. There's so much drama to each of the words that come out. And I kind of dig that.
Show me how you want it to be. Tell me, baby, 'cause I need to know now.
Not the first time, but I'm enjoying hearing it again.
It's killing me. And I must confess, I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time.
Can you hear those basses in the low end though?
Oh, baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? Oh, pretty baby,
Was that an airplane sound?
shouldn't have let you go. I must confess.
Wait, is they saying that like she's saying I shouldn't have let you go as in the person's left and she shouldn't have let them go?
That my loneliness is killing me now. Don't you know I still believe that you will be here and give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. My loneliness is killing me. And I must confess, I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time.
And development.
My loneliness is killing me now. Don't you know I still believe that you will be here and give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time.
And that dramatic kind of stab at the end. I dig it. So that was Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. So basically, I think this is about someone that's maybe regretting having let them go. And Britney's position, just, you know, the reason I breathe is you. You got me blinded, oh pretty baby. There's nothing I wouldn't do. It's not the way I planned it. Crazy. It's kind of an interesting parallel to Oops, I Did It Again here, where we're kind of really regretting, you know, we're really regretting who we lost, and Oops, I Did It Again was about sort of misinterpretation of the person's feelings or her feelings towards that other person. So it'll be good to hear Gimme more and Toxic, but just for now, Baby One More Time. It sort of has a lot of it kind of parallels a lot of the production and compositional techniques that we had in, again, the other track there. Oops, I Did It Again, I think through Wild Blue Dinner Box mentioned there about Max Martin potentially being involved. Is that correct? Was Max Martin involved with this one as well? I mean, either way, I think here for our very first single, given this is again was released in 1999, it's a fantastic start. As I mentioned here, it's very expressive. We've listened to, hang on, where is it? I've listened through Womanizer and Oops, I Did It Again, and now we're on Baby One More Time. So this is just going to be the top 5 on Spotify today. And then we got Gimme More after this, as well as Toxic. The live stream will be on the channel, as well as Patreon ad-free, because YouTube does ads. Yeah. Thanks, Blue Dinner Box. I appreciate that. But yeah, so if you want to watch it. Oh, did it? Thank you. So you apparently know quite a lot about them, Jiraj. Yeah, I think you might be quite a big fan of Britney Spears, if I'm not mistaken, by the sounds of it. So that's cool. So what do we want to say about this? I think that, again, we sing well. We've got a lot of interesting stuff going on with the backing vocals. I think what's really cool about this, in addition to the kind of drama from a lot of the vocal parts and the intensity, the expression of certain components there, I especially like the outro chorus where, they sing My Loneliness, is killing me now. Don't you know that I still believe? Like you got the backing vocals singing the original part of the chorus, and then Britney's doing an extra take on top. And it's just a really effective way to layer a secondary chorus. Like often you'll have people, they'll just do it again. And it can be a shame because there's just so much you can do with all the existing ingredients to further expand upon that for the big finish. And they do it here really neatly. And then they come together, Hit Me Baby One More Time. And the way I interpret that is it really is Britney calling out over the sound of what they've said before, trying another way to sort of reach the person that they're singing this to. And I think not just in terms of the actual quality of the performance there, it's also just interesting sort of like layering songwriting there. So I think that's really positive. In terms of the track itself, if we go back to the start, I mean, it's just straight into it with the piano line there, bom, bom, bom. And I think that is so distinctive that most people who grew up at the time would hear that piano line and go, bom, bom, oh, that's a Britney track. And we get into those kind of drums that have a similar tone texture to what we had with the 2000 album, if I'm not mistaken there. What was the 2000 album? Oh, it was Oops, I Did It Again, the album. So this was... What album was this one? Oh, Baby One More Time. So it was Baby One More Time, and then you've got Oops, I Did It Again. So those are the 2 albums there. With the Oops, I Did It Again album, I think they had a similar drum tone texture to this one. And it's just a great sort of 8th note groove there with a kind of swing and a swagger to it that has a nice sort of punchiness. And it's a tone that was present in a lot of music from the 90s. So the era that it comes from is instantly recognizable. And there's like elements along it that kind of accent that. And we've got that bass guitar too with the kind of thump of it and kind of the slap and pop of it occasionally as well for a bit of funkiness there to infer that further sense of rhythm to it. But then there's also those wah guitars that we had previously as well, and Oops, I Did It Again. There's like a formula with a lot of these instruments for how the music was made, and I think perhaps that was an attempt to tie maybe Britney Spears' bigger signals together. But like, again, just those... I was talking about the vocals before. I like the call and response that we have with the I Still Believe and how Britney's in the center and how they go to the sides there. Having the main vocals in the center and the backing vocals split like that is just a really interesting way to kind of flesh out a track and keep interest with the listener there. Careful attention to detail. And it's not something that's unique to this song, but I just mention it here because it's just so kind of blatant. The actual layering of the vocals across this track with the syncopation of certain elements, and how they come together and sort of separate, and when they come together when they really need to, is really effective.
Tell me,
And you got like the unison and like the keynotes and stuff like that, and that comes into the interlude section as well. Yes, first two albums are kind of similar, with Oops being slightly more mature in themes, but basically very similar teen pop sound. Mind you, she was 16, 18 in his first two albums. See, it'd be interesting to know more about how this was actually produced and written, because that's very young to be putting out 2 albums in 2 years. That's a lot of work to put out, you know. That's craziness. The music industry back in the 90s was wild, dude. But you've also got those really interesting kind of pulley basses there, which are just an interesting texture. The kind of the way they kind of pulsate underground and stuff like that, you know. It's just, there's fun sounds within it that kind of contrast with each other because of the way they're produced and pitched within the frequency spectrum and octaves. And you've got further organs here kind of oscillating there with the little kind of the stars and the bell trees and the synth strings and stuff like that. And it is like further kind of examples of these tracks being instrumentally fleshed out by individual ideas that just niche together and come in steadily at a time, apart from the most distinctive elements that form the groove in the first place. Again, and you've got those kind of starry synths in this chorus section as well. Like I'm starting to sort of pick certain ingredients that come through that I think are arguably a little bit more sort of dependent on the producer, because Womanizer has a very different sound to this. Womanizer is distinctly different in the way that it approaches things. There was a massive shift in production through those albums, as well as Toxic. You know, this is very much, I think, trying to find their identity within the existing compositional production stylings of the time. And I can't help but wonder whether Britney wanted to do the more kind of raunchy, edgy stuff in those later albums and preferred those kind of synthy tones and stuff, you know, of those later tracks in the late 2000s. But there's just so much layering. I know I'm talking about this track quite a lot. Just the instrumental layering is fantastic. How we have those chord note accents or those eighth note kind of focuses on the hi-hats and kicks and snares and stuff like that. And then we'll have like gaps where the bass comes in to call and respond. Or you've got the triads being fleshed out, articulated. It's just, I could sit here for half an hour talking about this. I want to sort of be more specific. There are a lot of really fantastic decisions here with distinct verse, chorus and interlude sections there, with a well fleshed out outro section, structurally sound, instrumentally captivating there. I think compositionally maybe a little bit safer than Womanizer. Yeah, exactly. So stylistically, the music is going to change between that bit, and there are a lot more sort of like electronic like influences, I think, in the late 2000s there, especially going into the early 2010s where electronic music really took off. So thematically, I think it was trying to sort of, again, have some R&B styles included in there, as well as trying to be sort of more trending sounding with the poppy instrumental elements there. And I think it was trying to sort of match music that was popular at the time. They're trying to fuse a more sort of like a variety of different genres there, with Britney's approach on top, needing to deliver a lot of the tension and drama from it, which they succeed in. And I think the strengths of this are Britney's capacity to be able to do those melodies and harmonies and have everyone else kind of work alongside it, to be able to express herself in different ways, being a bit more subtle, a bit more nuanced, a bit more kind of like a little bit more spicy in elements there. And just the way she changes her voice to suit is what gives this track a lot of the personality outside of the interesting decisions by the producers involved. Studio production wise, really effective in terms of the way that it pitches and changes the place of things in the stereo field. A lot of the comments are very similar to Oops, I Did It Again. I'm trying to sort of think of it like a standout part of this. I think what I will say about the studio production that's sort of additional to maybe a lot of the stuff said about the previous two tracks is that it is wonderful how deliberate they were with the placing of things within the frequency spectrums and stereo field. It's such a busy track that they're able to put his sort of main layers and sub layers in without overcomplicating the piece. They really were so accurate with how they managed to find those little micro niches within a piece and kind of put this little thing here or this little thing there. And it's really, again, it's just so cool how well they're able to provide two different experiences. The one where you're listening to it casually and you're just kind of nodding your head to the vibe of it, enjoying the lyrics and stuff. And the alternative one where you really just sit there and you absorb all of it and you realize how many different instrumental layers total they had in there, how they could kind of sort of compress and limit it and make it kind of groove and add oomph to it. But in a way where it's just so intricate. I think if anything, I've learned a lot more about. I've learned to appreciate 90s pop music a lot more from this listening section today. So yeah, ultimately another well-produced, well-written track. It's just a fantastic start. Like I think that, yeah, it's rough to compare it to musicians nowadays, but there just seems like a lot more involved in this track than there is with a lot of modern pop music. But yeah, we'll go Gimme More. Track number 2.
It's Britney, bitch. I see you. And I just wanna dance with you.
Off of Blackout 2007. So we got those kind of synthy focuses there that are very similar to Womanizer. So I do think there was like a direct split there.
Every time they turn the lights down, just wanna go that extra mile for you. Public display of affection feels like no one else in the room. Looking it down like there's no one.
Oh, fantastic side vocals there.
Cameras are flashing while we're dirty dancing. They keep watching, keep watching. Feels like the crowd is saying, gimme, gimme,
More vocal modulation. Very breathy performance. Again, it's just wonderful how expressive Britney is throughout these pieces. There's a lot of life to it, you know.
center of attention. Even when we're up against the wall, you got me in a crazy position. If you're on a mission, you got my permission. Breaking me down like there's no one around. We keep on rocking, keep on rocking, rocking. Cameras are flashing while we're dirty dancing. They keep watching, keep watching.
Is this more of a comment on how the paparazzi were with Britney at this point? Like how the paparazzi were kind of like giving her a real hard time at this point? And she was talking about like people watching and stuff like that, the cameras on her and stuff like that. Great vocal chop in there. Would that have been a vocal synth or something like that? That sounded like a vocal synthesizer, I think. That kind of like the vocals at this point here. It's kind of an interesting tone.
Bet you didn't see this one coming. The incredible Lago,
Oh, never mind. That was him. Largo. Is that it?
the legendary Miss Britney Spears, and the unstoppable Danger.
Hmm?
You're gonna have to remove me, cause I ain't going nowhere.
So that was the producer there. Nice. Excellent. Yeah, I thought so. We'll fade it out. So that was Gimme More. Yeah, so I think they were onto it. Thank you to Jiraj for helping me out with that. I appreciate it. It's a track about basically people watching what they did, being way too up in her grill, you know, paying attention to every move. Sounds very 2007. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. It's very 2007. It's crazy to think that that was like almost 20 years ago. I feel like aging as I speak. Anyways, moving on. So this is definitely about someone just wanting to do whatever they want to, regardless of who's watching, because they're kind of damned anyways, right? They're damned if they do, damned if they're not. Cameras are flashing while we're dirty dancing to keep watching. Feels like the crowd is saying, gimme, gimme more. And a lot of different voices. So part of what I appreciate about this is just how much more comfortable Britney seems just with singing this stuff. It's almost like in her first two albums, Baby One More Time, Oops, I Did It Again, she was building herself up into this kind of monolith of a superstar. And now at this point, she's just like, screw this, you know, like this is just stupid, you know. Clearly having serious kind of like issues with what's going on around her, with people mistreating her and kind of all the attention and just harassment. But she's just making a song where, like, you know, clearly just obsessed, you know. I think that kind of approach to it is just really cool. This, again, I know it came from like a tricky place. This came outright during her infamous public mental breakdown, but the album is maybe her best. I think, honestly, this is maybe a hot take. A lot of the best music comes when people are having a horrific time. Because a lot of people, when they're having a horrific time, are far more sort of like raw and organic and blunt. And a lot of their passion can come through in their music in a way that might not necessarily come through, for example, if they just don't have those problems. You know, it's what's it? Not Thin Lizzy. There was a band, and the guy was like not sure how to write music anymore, because he was like, when he was younger, he was very angry. But then what happened was, when he was younger, he was angry, and so they made a lot of music. But then when he was sitting in front of his mansion, he didn't know what music to make because he wasn't angry anymore. So here, Britney is just making music, and it's based on her life experiences. And that, honestly, I think part of it is also that it's more specific to Britney, because it's Britney's kind of situation at that point. The earlier stuff is music and stories that most people could relate to, even Womanizer to an extent. But this one, Gimme More, is very much more Britney focused, and I think because because of that, people who are fans of her would be able to relate, not because of how it affected themselves, but because of Britney's story, and it creates more of an interest about her, which is like a feedback loop. It's a positive feedback loop in terms of the actual effect of the music on the people listening to it. So I think, again, with a really competent, really kind of alluring, kind of sensual vocal performance there, especially that part where she kind of does the kind of, the sexy voice about, well, they can have more, etc. It with the filter on it there, like if she's on the phone talking to people, it's very alluring. And like, I don't know if there were many musicians around that time that could really pull that kind of thing off. Like Britney could. It's Britney, bitch, right? Just she knew she was the queen at that point, right? So like the way that she kind of like is playful with a lot of those patterns and the different voicings of that are solid. And it's just the expression, but the drama is put into a more sort of like spicy kind of exotic take, I suppose. It's more concentrated and less kind of general. So yeah, we continue with really sort of like, with a similar quality of vocal take to previous tracks, a little bit more sort of like, a little bit more sort of like focused here. If we look into the track itself at 4 minutes 11, there's quite a bit more going on within it.
It's Britney, bitch.
Again, just immediately having her come in with "It's Britney, bitch" sets the stage. It's going to be a different experience than what you might have had with her previously. She's no longer the good girl and the schoolgirl outfit like she was in the early 2000s. She's a fully grown woman who's sick of this. And she has those synths, and there's such an edge to them. And it's almost like it's based on like a pseudo-Phrygian mode or minor there. And it's just, there's an edge to it with the chord note kick and the clicks and stuff like that. And it kind of sounds like you're at a nightclub where you're going to kind of break it down. And so that sets the mood and the stage for that really neatly. It's almost like the stage part where she says "It's Britney, bitch." It's like through a speaker, so everyone kind of gets dancing in the club. But that part where her vocals go to the sides of the stereo field is just so intense, because we've previously not had her be as direct, and then suddenly, bam, you can hear the glow of it. There is no filter. It's bright. It's intense there. And it's just it's the way things are put in places to kind of lead you down a pathway and then take you to the side there. It's just being kind of like led by the nose there in a way that I think, when they talk about being "Give Me More," it's honestly what I think a lot of people were wanting from Britney music anyways. And there's like this boo kind of synthesizers, which were like a big thing at that point. Just interesting kind of spacey sort of like modern sounds there that kind of added a sort of I'm listening to something really kind of futuristic, like it made you feel young again. And like you got the really kind of mesmerizing sort of trancey pads on the side there alongside the really constrained kick and clicks. And it does sound like you're in a nightclub watching someone kind of do their thing and being sucked into it. And you have like these interesting filtered vocals, but also these kind of like mechanized takes and these kind of like modulated vocals, which sort of not just have one point, but then harmonize off of each other. And it's sort of kind of surreal in a sense. It's a very different direction from her 90s and like early 2000s stuff. And then you've got these more, and you've got these kind of vocal chops as well, further adding a more electronic sort of like feel to it. They become a rhythmic element that is kind of contrasting with all the consistency of a lot of the kick and snare patterns that you have here, with the drum beat being steady, but everything else around it being not necessarily chaotic, but just varying in the way it's presented and the way it expresses itself. So I think in addition to like everything else going on there instrumentally, like the synth pads and the strings and all the other sort of synth textures and all the different vocal layers, that all the modulated parts, it's a track where the drum beat suggests that it's kind of like a day in the life of Britney Spears, but everything else is basically commenting on how the dynamic is at that point and how they're going to dance regardless, all the stuff around them, the different voices and everything like that, everything, the chaos there in the ether is effectively, it's just what their life is. And I think that it makes sense for it to be more consistent across the board because of that. I think that if you'd had the push and pull of previous tracks where things stop and kind of start again like the interlude sections, we don't have that snap back to reality here because Britney knows what she's doing the entire time. Probably except for Pitbull, since the songs are all about good time. I think that Pitbull is just a cool dude. I think Pitbull is a cool dude. I've heard only good things about him. A cool dude, not a cold dude. Cool? Ah, he's a great guy. There we go. The subtitles wouldn't let me say cool, apparently. Oh, never mind. It does at that time. It'll be interesting for you to listen to Every Time from the same album as Toxic. It's a soft lullaby-esque ballad which was secretly about her unborn baby with Justin Timberlake. It would be interesting. Yeah. I've been asked to review more of Britney Spears' music, and I just don't know if I can commit to an entire album. But like, this is why I'm doing this today, to kind of go for like a feel through her main tracks, just to kind of vibe out if I like everything,
You're gonna have to remove me.
I think having Danger at the end, just to kind of help sort of like explain that this is a new era for Britney Spears, is a really cool thing as well, because it's like saying, hey, I know you think that you know Britney Spears, but we're going in this dance sort of nightclub vibe for the rest of our existence now, and you've just got to accept it. This is not the same Britney Spears. This might not even be what you want, but it's what you've got now. And if you want, you just got to cope with it, Get on the program. And it's just that sort of authority there is like, so yeah, a great personality to it. I don't think we've had a feature from another musician or another producer yet. Danger being a bit more sort of like outspoken is dope. And I think thematically, again, as I mentioned, it's sort of meant to represent being in a nightclub, watching Britney Spears, almost like the different sounds around a stereo field of the cameras going off. And you've just got that consistent theme across the board there, where we might have occasional sort of adjustments in the bass lines or something like that. But ultimately, it's that one sort of main motif that's pulled back and built up and kind of stacked down. And it's more about the atmosphere that's sort of created rather than going on a journey. It's just so you getting used to Britney's new sound. So I think that's yeah, honestly, I think it's just very much kind of like A and B in terms of production with these tracks. I'm going to talk about that more in the conclusion at the end though, but is there anything else? Yeah, I wonder what Britney Spears thinks of her old music most versus her like 2000 stuff. I wonder how Britney feels about her discography. I think having that kind of classy fade out at the end though, just in terms of the studio production, again, I think a lot of the decisions made with like the positions of things in the stereo field, the vocal modulation with the chopping of stuff there, the tuning to kind of make more of a melody within the mix was kind of dope. And the harmonizing of those sort of tuned parts was great. I think on maybe Jange's part, it was nice it was great to have all those different ways that Britney expressed herself with the chorus section, and the fact that those were all leveled really neatly, in addition to the filtered parts where she sounded like she was on the telephone or something like that, or on a speaker system, was great. And there was just decisions made in terms of with the reverb and delays and stuff like that to kind of add a bit of kind of mistiness to it, and alongside a lack of brighter textures outside of the fuzziness of some of those synth parts, with the vocals being the main sort of source of that. But it's not meant to be a bright, happy, chirpy track. It's meant to be a track which is kind of someone working through their stuff and people having to sort of like cope with that, I think. It did sound she was going through stuff, even though she was trying to be sort of like, you know, take what you get, you know, with it. But yeah. We got one more track. I've really got to sort of like be more mindful of when I go on tangents with stuff. I suppose it's a compliment to Britney Spears in a sense that you know, people have stuff to say. However, we have Toxic. Track number 1 for today. Let's talk about that. Wait, was there anything more about Giving More I wanted to say before Toxic? No, I feel like I laid it out reasonably well. There is at least some sort of feedback on the track from that, if not too much. Toxic, let's do it. Track number 1. Off of the 2000... No! That was 2003? I didn't realize that was 2003. That's crazy, dude. The drama with the strings, man.
Baby, can't you see I'm calling? A guy like you should wear a warning.
That bass underneath is filthy, though. That is a filthy bass synth with a portamento.
There's no escape. I can't wait. I need a hit. Baby, give me it. You're dangerous. I'm loving it.
Her 4th. Crazy. Great use of repeaters on that. Bit more kind of, a little bit more raunchy with those lines at the end, right? Bit more kind of body to it.
It's getting late to give you up. I took a sip from my devil's cup. Slowly, it's taking over me.
And see, that's clever there. You think, bow, wow, wow, wow. You think that string take is going to go down again. But they're going, oh, we got to flip. We're going to switch it up there. It's the absolute right time to do it. You're just not letting the listener get too familiar with the way you're structuring those verse parts. And the sound of the filtered drum kit. Like the dreamy aesthetic of like the vocals like a siren calling or something like that. It's just absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, it's not hard to understand why this song is so popular. It's incredibly well written. I think this is Britney with just a really sort of like stellar vocal performance on top. Like so that interlude section, the part where she goes up in a range, it's just sung really beautifully there, with the kind of filtered distorted drums and stuff like that. It's tremendous. But I suppose what are we talking about? You know, baby, can't you see I'm calling? A guy like you should wear a warning. It's dangerous. I'm falling. There's no escape. I can't wait. There's no escape. I can't wait. It does, because it uses these kind of string-laden kind of like spy motifs, almost like it's a danger, you know, like you're falling for the supervillain or something like that. It's a very exotic kind of dangerous thing. There's the kind of cowboyish guitar things with the tap delay there, the button, you know, like that's that part there, which is almost like a cowboyish kind of thing. It's like, oh, you got a raunchy kind of like risky, deadly man, but you're falling for him. Like the call is too strong. It's slick. It's slick. It's really cool. So yeah, I think this is about being sort of like just absolutely besotted with someone to the extent where you cannot resist them, and they are just too much to be able to handle. And I think that that's a cool thing to write a song about. It's going to be relatable to people. It's more of a generalized thing than the previous track we had with Gimme More, where it's less, I think, specific maybe to Britney Spears, although, you know, I don't know. I'm assuming it's something she's gone through herself. But like there's an inherent, again, like a kind of a sexiness to it through just what we're discussing here, the way that we're kind of sing here. It sounds like she's falling for someone there. It's fantastic. It seems very authentic. And I love the mixture of the way we sing in that kind of mid-range through those verse sections. The way we explore our range a bit more on the chorus parts, the way we kind of get, because you know that the kind of the more kind of intense parts with a bit of fry. And I love What You Do, Don't You Know That You're Toxic there. Like that kind of intensity there is great to kind of contrast with the breathiness of some of the other bits in there. There's just a range of different vocal styles, as well as the interlude part there, where she kind of goes from more of like an instrumental melody kind of vibe as opposed to a storytelling device there, which I think there's just so lots of different ways of vocalizing as per the previous tracks within this top 5, you know. So there's consistency across the board at this point there. We handle ourselves on the mic. We're very expressive. The lyrics make sense. The track itself at 3 minutes 18 is very well fleshed out. There's a lot to sort of appreciate here. You got that just phenomenal string motif at the start. It's very busy. And then you kind of go, wow, 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 wow. And like, it's just satisfying because you go low, high, low, high. You know, it kind of bombs back itself. And you've got, again, those kind of filtered drums that go back in that interlude later on. But there's just, again, when there's no filler. We're not allowing ourselves to kind of slack on having a little bit extra for someone to get kind of hooked on there. You have a feeling of the groove and the tempo there immediately, but you don't have the full sound of the drums at that point because it would just be too intense. And then we have that portamento bass, if I'm not mistaken, kind of introduce us. No, never mind. I'm just tripping. The guitar parts sound dope, though. I think that there's like a strummed kind of guitar part on the side there, and they play some interesting chords in the chorus section there that kind of fill out the triads really neatly. And we kind of have some chromatics in there for a bit of extra edge in there. Something a little bit outside the diatonic there for a bit of kind of a melodic harmonic kind of feel there, or a bit of a chromaticism that kind of works with the spy vibe that we were talking about there, because there's a lot of chromatics within those kind of James Bondish kind of spy flicks. And the Mission Impossible kind of thing. Yeah, the bass does come in just after the vocals come in. So Britney introduces herself after a break, and then you've got the portamento on that bass, and that bass is like, it's very distinct. It's very different from what we had in Oops, I Did It Again and Baby Baby One More Time. And I think that's a smart move. You need a really kind of like raunchy sounding bass there, something that kind of rides in the low end and kind of wriggles about, almost like you're kind of kind of writhing around because of how difficult it is to cope with the situation. And it's smart there. Because it's smooth, it contrasts with the punch of a lot of the sort of kick and snare patterns and stuff like that. And the way that the strings and the other elements are and the guitars are put on the sides of the stereo field, they don't argue with the bass at any point. They're clearly defined within the mix. And they perform different functions, as I've said, throughout the rest of it. It's just not usually as distinct. And you have like this fantastic unison when those basses, there might even be like an electric bass, or maybe like we're kind of wah 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 kind of pulsating the bass. But the way that the guitars know to strum with the accents of those, with how tightly glued stuff is really positive there. You have kind of a free flowing kind of dun to dun to dun dun to dun with the bum 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 kind of guitar lead lick on the sides there. Don't you know what you do? Don't you know, I'm addicted to you, don't know that you're toxic. And I love what you do. And then there's this kind of instant kind of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and kind of like staccato, like, oh, we're pushing towards something different here. There's sort of suspense with that. And then what they do structurally is they have a pause there, which is just so cool because it's like, oh, we're playing around with dynamic range and the perceived intensity of stuff. And we like play around with things. We have Britney often introduce these different verse sections, and that's that makes a lot of sense. And then as we mentioned, we had the inverted motif of the string part there in that second verse to kind of show a bit of development through the piece and switch things up a little bit. But I also want to sort of comment before we move on about the synthesizers in the interlude section there. We have this build before we go into Britney's vocoder bit, and these are some of the most sick sounding drum and bass synths. Like this part here. It's like that, those tones would work well in any kind of drum bass or electronic or even dubstep track nowadays. They were doing this in the early 2000s. That's wild, dude. I'm not going to pretend that this wasn't possible with the hardware that they had back then, but the wow, it's just so... It's just such a lush sounding tone there. And it's just these little bits of sort of like fanciness. These little bits of love and care that are put into these songs there just to go, oh, wait, this is a cool sound. You can tell they're having fun there. That you can tell that they're having fun with it. There is no logical reason to really have that there. It's not like it didn't match anything else previously. It's just, oh, whoa, we're kind of oscillating and pulsating and then boom, we're going out with Britney Spears with the uppercut. We're going back to that chorus section. And then we kind of have that double chorus at the end. Well, we have a variation on the chorus motif there with the vocal parts. The used augmented fourth, diminished fifth, and that high violin motif. We call it tritona, so it makes you feel a bit uneasy on the edge because it's very dissonant sounding interval. Yeah, I that's cool. That's cool. Thank you for mentioning that. In that case, they're deliberately kind of doing that, I think, to, as you said, make it very kind of uneasy. But then what's so satisfying about it? What's so satisfying about that is they go back to a more familiar motif to kind of soothe it out a little bit. Like you're attentive to that tension, but you're also like, oh, holy crap, what is this now? I'm kind of overwhelmed. Like you go back to the smoothness and then it's just that push-pull again. Like with the synth oscillators in there that I was talking about before, there's this movement, this pulsating, writhing bass underneath. It's that kind of push-pull that's not just said within the vocals, but also in instrumental parts. And there's a nice parallel between those. So I think part of what makes the theme work with this song is the use of, again, like just the real all-incredible sort of like string, sort of like bass, drum, guitar, kind of like layers with the different vocal parts and the dubstep synths and the filtered drums. Just all the different instrumental components. but how they also played notes outside of the major and minor scales with those tritones as we discussed there, or diminished fifth chords, to invoke a sense of kind of like discomfort, to then pull back into something a bit more sort of like slick and palatable. And they did that a lot of the time through the track, that push pull, and the vocals kind of discuss that, and there's a great sort of like connection there. It's also the kind of the spy theme there, like someone is on a mission to get to this person despite how dangerous they are. And like the allure of someone, like the femme fatale or the male fatale or something like that in a situation. And you hear it, and I think there was also like a spy theme to the video or something like that as well. So honestly, just I've said a lot about these tracks today, and I think I've rambled a little bit, but yeah, again, just one more thing. Yes. And so when Britney Spears is singing in that interlude section, the bow, it kind of mirrors some of the string elements we have before, and also works off of the spy motif kind of musical idea there as well. There's just these little attention bits of detail that are put in there to really kind of like connect and relay different ideas in a way that does make the most of it. Like, I don't think we needed to have a twist in the tail like we might have had with Baby One More Time or Oops, I Did It Again. And we didn't need to have a big reveal like we had with Gimme More. It was simply reiteration with Britney doing something different with her voice to make it more exciting at that point, and then back to the kind of robotic synths, kind of match the tone of the synths underneath, like with the vocoded vocals or whatever, and then boom, final chorus and done. So studio production wise, I think it was the tone of those synthesizers and the way that we kept those acoustic elements, like again the strings and everything like that, maybe the samples that we had, and we put them into the piece with those analog elements, like so the digital elements like the drums and the bass and stuff, how we tied those together, how we got Britney's layers over the top, much like with previous works. And it's just vivacious, and I understand why it's so successful. And it's the approach and expression of Britney which is captured with the studio production without overproducing it and sterilizing it. It's just exciting music. But as per the last four songs, there are bits in this that you wouldn't necessarily pay attention to unless you're listening to them through headphones. So it's just, again, I've said it already, but it's really important to try and listen to these songs and pay attention to them with active listening, because we run the risk of missing things otherwise, and it can just, elevate the experience. In terms of other comments with studio production, it's a similar level to previous tracks there. Like when you get to major labels, it's very difficult for them to really screw up studio production, but I just think ultimately it's the way things are stacked and niched and filtered. But there are parallels across the different tracks. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these 5 tracks. This is conclusion time. We have listened through 5 tracks today. Womanizer, Oops, I Did It Again, Baby One More Time, Gimme More, and Toxic from Britney Spears. These 5 tracks here on the screen, should I say. I had myself back up again. I apologize for that. And it was fantastic. I think these thoughts are going to be my overall thoughts on Britney Spears' music today, what I've learned from it, I suppose. As someone who has not listened to a lot of Britney Spears' music, at least not actively. So most of these tracks are about our interactions with other men, with Womanizer discussing someone who has been sort of like looking at another like male player and like the game they have and like an alternate reality. Maybe they could have gotten together, but they're not. They see what they're up to. Oops, I Did It Again. Mistakenly leading someone on in the sort of like drama, losing their senses and stuff like that. Baby One More Time, their very first track in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, released in September 1998. Where they're discussing how like they wish they could have another chance with this person. Toxic, how they're addicted to this person even though they're bad for them, and they just continue going back to that person, or they want to kind of to get lost in that again. And then finally Gimme More, which is like very different. It's a track where they're discussing the fact that they are aware that they are the center of people's attention, and people are just too much up in their business, and they just want to go in a new different direction and keep dancing like people are watching. And it's so blatant that we're in that direction that Danja comes in at the end and kind of like elaborates on that further. So it's a very cool set of songs that I feel I can understand why each is successful, and I did like each of them. And I can say that this is the first time doing a top 5 that I have liked all the 5 tracks. I think that it's evident that Britney Spears can sing, that they can talk and communicate, and that they can act, and that they're incredibly expressive with their music. There is no point where I listened to this where I was disinterested or not invested. There are moments where we have just phenomenal variation of the different vocal takes, with not just like singing and backing vocals and harmonies and all that kind of stuff. Moments where we are the instrument and we are the main lead, but we're singing melodies as opposed to sort of doing more storytelling, which is something I suppose a bit as we went further on, we became a bit more sort of like comfortable with. But we also have chopping of vocals, modulation, and sort of like vocoding elements there. We have other people come to talk like Danger later on, and we are comfortable sort of like allowing sort of space for them. But we were adventurous. We were adventurous with our music, and I think it's so cool that Britney is open to that, and that Britney was open to trying all these different things during her time making this music. Even at times where it was very difficult for her to be able to do that because of reasons that, I think a lot of people are aware of. So I think that on the microphone, there was never a moment where I misunderstood what Britney was trying to communicate. It came across, I think she became more kind of assertive over time and more comfortable with expressing herself as she went on. But from the beginning, they again, the technique was there and it just blossomed over time. And again, considering the fact that if I understand correctly, they were like 16, 18 at the time of doing a lot of these first 2 albums, that's incredibly young. It's incredible that they got to experience that success, So, musically, it's very difficult for me to sort of like give an overall sort of discussion on the various instrumental parts there, as there are a lot of sort of like instruments used across the different pieces. But like if we at least look structurally, these were more sort of like straightforward modern pop pieces where they had verses and choruses and interludes and some bridges. There were some parts like in Oops, I Did It Again where they kind of had a chat between the woman, Britney, and the guy that she was kind of discussing stuff with. There were some parts where they didn't have an interlude at all. It was kind of more sort of like Britney iterating over the spy theme that they have. Gimme More, she just let kind of Danger talk at the end for that last little bit. And, there was a clear distinction and approach to how they wanted to approach. She knew what she wanted to say at different parts. Most of the tracks were very distinct with their passages. I think Gimme More was more constant with the theme over the track, with like various adjustments to the layers as opposed to different bass lines and chord progressions and stuff like that. Because I think it was more about presenting in an environment and allowing things to fluctuate from there. Whereas with Britney's earlier stuff, it was more sort of like, oh, we have to adjust to have this being the verse and this being the chorus and stuff like that. We have to sort of make them distinct. In terms of the actual instrumental parts of the tracks there, the percussion was fantastic. There were some really interesting tones there, predominantly focused on like sort of like more traditional kick snares and sort of like cymbal patterns there, occasional clicks. Some songs had little fills and stuff like that, which were kind of cool. And I like the fact that we used a mixture of the acoustic and electronic drum kits. We weren't afraid to filter different drum kits to make them a little more sort of like in the background. We also had sort of like interesting sort of like bass patterns there. With the 90s like stuff, Baby One More Time and Oops, I Did It Again, we had more of a focus on that kind of nostalgic sort of slap bass there with the kind of bob one with the kind of wah guitars and organs, stuff like that, the oscillations there, which was pretty neat. As we went further into the 2000s with like Toxic and Gimme More and Womanizer, we were more sort of comfortable with our synth sort of like basses and portamento, kind of filthy low ones, and our dubstep and kind of drum bass ones. And I think that was one of the big distinctions with Britney's music, is that it split around that 2003 mark to more of a electronic focus, I think, after that. Potentially to suit the vibe of what was required at that point. But either way, I can't tell if that was because that was the music that Britney wanted to make, or if it was just what the industry wanted. But either way, it's cool, you know? But in terms of the bass patterns there, we were either rolling with octaves or roots, and it typically worked very, very well. There were some interesting guitar parts, like with Toxic there, we worked with sort of triads and strummed and played interesting 8th and 16th note grooves there, typically major and minor triads there. Maybe One More Time had some interesting kind of what was it? Yeah, no, it was more the kind of wah guitar. Am I thinking of giving more? No, I'm thinking of Toxic there. We had those kind of the cowboyish kind of bow 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 bow. Those kind of like call and response parts there were kind of faded out into the ether there. The guitar was less deliberate with Baby and Oops, I Did It Again. Gimme more. Womanizer was more sort of synth oriented, and Toxic had more as a kind of strumming there to kind of provide a sort of flamenco kind of exotic feel to it. But I think like you had keys occasionally as well, and those keys typically sort of provide a sort of a focal point of the arpeggio or the triads there or the chord progressions, or they simply showed the start of a track like Oops, I Did It Again, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's Baby One More Time. Oops, I had the kind of strings gaps, and as well as some sort of like piano parts as well. But there were occasional like the triads came in occasionally, but the keys weren't really the focus of it. The focus of these tracks were typically Britney's vocals, but there are some songs which kind of create lush atmospheres where we were surrounded by the synth pads and other sort of like harmonic elements there. Some songs had like kind of twinkly keys up the top to match notes. Other songs had like instruments that deliberately, rhythmically in time with the vocals in order to make them stand out more, whilst going away at certain components. Harmonically, melodically, rhythmically, sort of like sophisticated. Each song had its own identity, even though Baby One More Time and Oops, I Did It Again were closer with their overall sort of feels of it, I think, because we were a bit more sort of conservative with the way that we were approaching production and direction for those tracks. And ultimately, thematically, I've spoken about each of these tracks individually, but I typically think that the way that the song was written, the chord choices, the rhythms, progressions there, the bits of air candy that we have underneath them, those made sense with what we were singing about, and Britney solved them well. And I think that there was no song here where if you compared what was written, what was placed, and what was performed, and what was sung or said, that you'd be confused by it. So there was a great sort of chemistry between the elements there, and I think overall things were well performed. The studio production, the recording, mixing, and mastering was solid across the board. There were a wide variety of different vocal techniques there with the clean parts, the sides there, a bit of tuning occasionally, or deliberate sort of like Vocaloid or sort of like melody, like not the one where you kind of put your voice through like a vocoder, like a synthesizer or something like that. There was filtering of vocals to make it sound like it was through like a radio or a phone call sometimes. And there was just lots of interesting ways that we approached that. There were nice use of reverb and effectails on the vocals as well as the instruments and everything like that. Sometimes we had dreamy sort of like aesthetics like Oops, I Did It Again, where something seems like kind of filtered in the ether there. We had almost like a saxophone kind of feel to that as well, which was interesting. But there were no issues with how things were laid within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field there. Ultimately, the tracks were well balanced there. There were some tracks where even there was such a distinction between the instrument or individual layers that they almost sounded a little bit disparate, but they still had a specific sort of sound to them overall that made sense within context. There was dynamic range to these tracks, and they were nice and loud without pumping. Ultimately, I think this was good. My closing comments on this, because I've said a lot about Britney Spears today, and this has been a longer one of these live streams. And I know I yap a bit. I think this is the first time I've listened through a live stream or like a top 5 and liked every track. And I did not think it would be Britney Spears. When I was younger, I didn't particularly like Britney Spears' music that much. I didn't really care for it. But I think as I've gotten older, I've become a bit more open-minded. I think as you become open-minded, you start to appreciate the quality of music and what it means in the grand scheme of things. And I think that I'm thankful as a musician for what Britney's done for the industry, and I hope that she finds happiness, you know? So thank you for watching my review of these tracks from Britney. These 5 tracks: Womanizer, Oops, I Did It Again, Baby One More Time, Gimme More, and Toxic. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their Spotify page. Stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. You're welcome, Jiraj and Blue Dinner Box. Thanks to everyone who came along, and I will catch you in the next SP live streams. I think next week we've got a BTS, if I'm not mistaken. We'll be checking out their top 5. So, spider hands out. 3, 2, 1.